Hubert Davis in North Carolina shut a lot of people up last season with a great season, grabbing a 1 seed. They make the Sweet 16, but man, did RJ Davis pick an unlucky, just the wrong time to have his worst game of the season, shooting 4 of 20 from the field and falling to a red hot Alabama team. The good news is Davis, Cadeau, a lot of guys are back. Armando Bacot is not going to be a Tar Heel this year, which is just hard to wrap my head around, but still a lot to be excited about down in North Carolina. Christian Nick here with Riley Davis, who covers Carolina for Heat Check. Riley, great to have you. Tell us, just kind of the fallout, the temperature of the program after that loss heading into the summer, and what it means to have RJ back and what the expectations are for this year.
I would say it's felt like a lot of peaks and valleys because, the way the season ended as a Carolina fan was just brutal to watch. RJ, who was shooting over 40% on the season, just go 0 from 9 from 3 that game. Alabama sagged off Elliot Cadeau a ton and Seth Trimble as well when he came off the bench, which just seemed to throw a wrench into the offense. I think they ended up scoring 88 points that game, still 89 points, but I would say that's more of a reflection of Alabama's defense from last season than Carolina having some great game plan that Alabama was just able to exploit a couple of their weaknesses. And, heading into the offseason, a lot was made over the various misses Carolina had, looking for a big, looking for an Armando Bacot replacement. And I would say those were definitely the valleys. It's very frustrating as a fan, just seeing different players who appeared to be interested in Carolina, even seemed like a couple were on the verge of committing, whether that was Cliff Amorie, whether it was Jonas Adu, and just all fell apart for various reasons. But then again, you still have the peaks of returning RJ Davis. It just sort of seemed like in the fan base overall, there was more of a focus on who's going to be playing in the front court than Carolina brought back one of the 3 best players in the sport. So it's sort of how it goes, but I still think even as you get closer and closer to the season, fans get optimistic. They start talking themselves into the roster. And I still think there's a lot to like about this team, particularly the perimeter group with both the guards and wings and a lot of lineup flexibility that you're going to see at positions 1 through 4. It just comes down to, can they get – I think they're going to have to go center by committee, and can they get enough productivity, enough rim protection, enough rebounding out of that 5 spot with, whether it ends up being 2, 3, or even 4 guys who spend some minutes there.
Got to address the elephant in the room off the bat, right? Did Elliot fix his shooting over the summer? Because he shot 18% from 3 last season. He had no confidence, and we saw what Alabama did. They straight up just did not even guard him out there. And I will say, that may not work in the future. Obviously, RJ Davis is not going to do what he did. That was a complete outlier of a game. But obviously, this is one of the best backcourts in the country if Elliott develops and has a jumper and a 3-point shot this season. So did he work on that in the summer, obviously? Did it improve? And what do you think his percentage is going to be from 3 this season?
Yeah, I've gone on record saying I think he's going to make a leap up to 34, 35% and hit somewhere between 35 to 43s. It feels that's basically doubling his percentage, so it does feel pretty bold. But I know, it's funny that if you talk to Hubert or if you talk to Elliot, this was even UNC's media day was, I think, exactly a week ago, and I asked Elliot straight up, did you make mechanical tweaks to your shot? And he said no. But at the same time, he was posting work with a trainer, with a shooting coach all summer, and it looked like there were some mechanical tweaks made. And I'm not a shot doctor by any means, but I just like watching it, just little subtleties in his shot that looked a little bit different. I guess even his footwork, his base looked different than it was last season. And, there were times where a couple of his made threes looked a little smoother down the stretch of the year. I think he hit a couple against NC State in the regular season and was one of the last regular season games of the year. And he hit 2 against Alabama before they started sagging off of him. That looked good. But there were times earlier in the year where it almost looked like he had a hitch in his shot, which I hadn't seen watching him at the at the EYBL level. If you go back right before he reclassed that summer when he was playing with NH Lightning, he was nailing step back threes and was combining that with the playmaking and the facilitating skills that made him that earned him 5-star status. So it wasn't like the shot was always broken, but I thought there definitely seemed to be at least some minor tweaks that needed to be made last season. And I don't know if he and Hubert just like aren't wanting to go too much into that, but at least for me, from like, I'm not going to dispute what they say, but it's just from my like untrained eye. It looks like something has been changed. But I don't think why you wouldn't if you shot 18%, like I would be looking to make at least some small changes to that.
So, I mean, he is such a fun playmaker. Like his vision and like, right when he started playing last year, I was super impressed by him, and he reclassified too. So I'm pretty sure he was a little younger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess to clarify, and you mentioned this, but like, was it circled at all when he came in of like, this guy is not really a good shooter, or was it just like, it's not the strength of his game, but it's not necessarily a clear weakness? Like, was it surprising, I guess, what transpired?
Yeah, I remember like even they do like the blue and white game every year where it's just like the inter-squad scrimmage that's open to the public. And he hit a couple threes off the bounce. I want to say he finished with 16 or 17 points in that scrimmage like this time last year. And his threes looked like they were in rhythm to where the first game of the year was against Radford. And I'm pretty sure the first three he took like missed, basically barely hit the iron on hit the backboard on the right side of the hoop. Didn't even graze iron. I was like, that seems a little bit odd. Like, where did this come from? Because that wasn't really the scouting report. Even like this time last year, the chatter about Elliott was, with him reclassing, is he there defensively? There was chatter that he was nowhere near ready defensively. Or even beyond that, I think there was some worries that maybe he, even with his playmaking skill, he could be a little too ball dominant at times. And I don't know, was more so like holding the ball to the last second, then he'd make the pass to try to get the assist or something, as opposed to playing more in the flow of the offense. And really, I thought he played really good defense down the stretch of last year and made a ton of strides on that end. And I think the on-off numbers bear it out. Like RJ's efficiency, his field goal percentage, his points per game were much higher with Elliott on the floor than not. Like I think what Cadeau offered the most was like he just played very much within the flow of the offense. It never felt like he was, hogging the ball or pounding the air out of it, waiting to make like the flashy pass or something. So yeah, the shooting to me was kind of out of left field with it being such a struggle.
I hope for his sake that he figures it out a bit. It was tough. Like he just as a young kid to be in that moment, because like, he shooting 2 for 5 like is good.
Yeah,
and
right.
Part of me was like, technically Carolina could let him keep going out there if he shoots 40% and they just let, you know what I'm saying? But he was like, I don't want my season to end on an Elliott Cadeau shooting contest. And he was done. But yeah, I think another thing Nick and I had mentioned about this was just like, it's such a difference to be shooting in open gym versus in the game. Like there's a clip of CJ McCollum talking about, he's like, yeah, like on a good day, I'm shooting like 94 out of 100 from 3 in practice. And it's like, and if you're shooting, over 40% in the league, like you're doing fantastic. So it's like, even if Elliott does take these steps, if he goes into that game and it's for game one and someone sags off him a bit and he missed it, it's like
yeah, right.
And that's a problem. But I don't want to spend too much time on him because there's a lot of other things to talk about. I think the biggest thing for me to get around on this team is Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram were so great last year as 3-point shooters, as guys who could put the ball on the floor, who could defend, who could lead. And there's just a big hole in the wing. And obviously they cut the hole too, but I'm more concerned about the wing. So tell me how excited we should be for Ian Jackson, and can Cade Tyson be a guy that transfers and makes a big impact?
Yeah, I'm pretty high on all three of the wings, from Cade Tyson, Drake Powell, and Ian Jackson. Cade, I wonder if like maybe you could say some of the projected defensive struggles keep his role a little more limited than like an Ingram or a Brady Manick type, but I would still expect him to get somewhere like 25 minutes a game, 26, 27 in that range, probably primarily at the 4. Just looking at like the best Hubert Davis teams had Harrison Ingram last year, who was, shot 38% from 3 on the year, and even beyond that had a little bit of versatility in his game with, dribbling into a post up and could do a little bit more with the ball in his hands. And then Brady Manick, who was like a 40% shooter, made over 100 threes his one season in Chapel Hill. Where I think Hubert knows a formula that it's going to be to put someone with the size and shooting combination at like Tyson at the 4. I think he's listed at 6'8". I swear he looks taller. Like every time I see him on the court, I'm like, this dude looks like he might be a legit 6'9", 6'10". But there are some defensive concerns just coming up from the Missouri Valley. But, my case for Cade has always been Missouri Valley transfers have had a lot of success transferring up recently. If you look at Rink Mast at Nebraska, Lance Jones and Marcus Domas at Purdue and Illinois, respectively, last year. And even if you want to say like Ben Shepherd going from Belmont, being a first-round pick to the Pacers, that's a pretty big up transfer as well.
All the Drake guys this year are going to be good.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I'm pretty high on him, but I think Drake Powell is one I'm most excited for, even more so than Ian Jackson, just because he has this reputation as the best perimeter defender in the class. He's a spring-loaded athlete. He can handle a little bit, and I truly think like you can pretty much play him at the 2, 3, or 4, depending on the need. I think he's going to see a lot of time at the 4, actually, just to make sure you're getting Cade Tyson on the floor, you're getting Ian Jackson on the floor, you're getting Seth Trimble on the floor next to both RJ and Elliott.
I actually really love Cade. I watched a good bit of MVC basketball last year, and like there were some games I had watched, and like he just didn't miss. It felt like, and like I went back and looked at his stats, and like the dude shot 47% from 3. Like that's
one of
the highest I've seen on the scouting reports all offseason.
Right.
So I'm high on him. Another guy I'm high on, I think can make a big leap, is Seth Trimble. Like he definitely had his moments last season. I'm like, hey, this guy's athletic. This guy has some stuff in his bag. Like, do you think his role will grow this season with Ian Jackson, Drake Powell in the mix, or do you think he's still going to be off the bench, just playing a few minutes a game and doing what he can do?
I would guess he'll still be like 15, 17 minutes a game. This is where I really think Hubert is going to have to be creative with running 4-guard lineups if you're playing Drake at the 4. I wouldn't be surprised to see lineups where maybe Drake is the nominal 4, but Seth is the one who like guards the 4 on the other end. And that might cause some issues in spurts if you probably don't want to stick him on like a 6'9", 6'10", 4. But not that many teams have like jumbo sized guys playing the 4. Usually, I feel like the average height is probably more like 6'6", 6'7". And with Seth's he's well built. He's got a long wingspan. This is something else I actually talked to him about at Media Day, where I was basically telling him, like, yeah, man, I remember watching you in high school guard Patrick Baldwin Jr., so we've seen you guard 4s before. Like, it's going to make sense if Hubert's going to, lean into this small ball lineup to just get your best players on the floor. So, yeah, I think with him offensively, he simplified his role a lot last year, is basically shoot corner threes, attack closeouts, play in transition. He showed the ability to get into the lane and to have a little bit of touch on his or a little bit of skill on his finishes, whether that was going to a floater or just kind of like adjusting in the air, showing good body control to finish through contact or around defenders. So I'm hopeful to see his offensive game continue to expand a little bit.
Yeah, and just such an explosive athlete. And I like how you're projecting kind of the same role for him, because I think a lot of times, people just want to make up these hugely Easter guys, but it's like, it's okay if he doesn't, expand his offensive game a ton. He can still make a huge impact doing the same role he was and getting a little bit better, but he doesn't have to be a completely different player. One guy that I definitely want to talk about is Jalen Washington. He's a guy that I have been quietly banging the drum for this first 2 years, is like, what am I missing? Because I think this guy's really good. Like, he's 6'10", can move really well, has a nice little face-up game. Like, he's been training under – he sneaky shot 8 for 15 from deep last year, and it's like, you've had a couple years under Armando Bacot. You were highly touted out of high school. I guess this is a two-part question. One, why didn't he play more the last 2 years? Like, I understand Bacot was great and had a good motor and everything, but I always thought Washington deserved more minutes. And like, two, how high do you think the ceiling could be for him this year? Like, I think, is he going to be a guy that you think they're going to be looking to like early in games? Like, let's get this guy post touches. Like, we can play through him a bit. I know the backcourt is the strength of this team, but we'll get to Van Allen Lubin in a second. But Washington is the scoring presence in the front court or the back to basket game. I'm a fan. Tell me what you've been hearing about.
Yeah, his freshman year, he was coming off of I think he tore both ACLs in high school. And that was when he committed to UNC, he was a fringe 5-star top 25 kid. He either tore both ACLs or tore the same ACL twice, and maybe had there might even been like a botched procedure there somewhere. I don't want to if this is, I don't want to claim 100% accuracy on this, but it's something along those lines that like the injury really hampered him toward the end of his high school career. So he was working back to full health his first year and really just had a couple moments where he made an impact on the game off the bench. But last year, I thought he played really well in 8 minutes per game. Like he had some strong moments. Played really well in the against Syracuse in the Dean Dome. He played really well in the game against Duke and Cameron. As to why he didn't get more minutes, I think it was mainly just on the defensive end. And personally, I thought his mobility was a little bit better. Like UNC iced his ball screens a ton. That was pretty much how they played last season. He could do that. He could play that coverage at least competently, because his mobility looked way better than his freshman year. But I think it was more so a lack of strength, where sometimes like bigs would target him, and he just needs to gain strength and kind of improve his balance as well. That's honestly what I'm looking for, like looking out of him most this year, because if he's able to hold position better in the post, like he has a 7'3" wingspan and had a pretty good block rate last year, to where there's a world where he can be, I think, a serviceable to even solid defender. And what he might lack in strength, he can make up for some in shot blocking. But and just his conditioning, his body's ability to hold up, going from like 8 minutes a game to, if he could play 20 minutes a game, I think that would be a huge win for UNC. I think they need him to. He's by far the most talented player, like at the top.
And then
what do you think his stat line will be this season? I'm pretty curious about that.
Yeah, I would predict probably like 8 a game, 6 boards in 20-ish minutes. I think that would be a big win, and hopefully he shows enough that like you can rely on him going into his senior year to give you closer to somewhere double digits, like 12, 13 a game, maybe 8 boards. And hopefully that would mean you don't have to hit the portal again to try to find an impact 5 like they did this past offseason. Yeah, the shot looks really good. I'm a little bit skeptical just because it was such a low volume, but I will say, Christian, you were right on. Like his face-up game is smooth. His face-up game is like automatic. He's pure from the mid-range. Every time he shoots over a defender, I think it's going in.
And he'll be interchangeable at the 5 with Van Allen Lubin.
So yeah, that's I'm very curious to see how that unfolds. I feel pretty confident projecting Washington as the starter. But who gets those backup minutes? It could be Lubin. It could be Jalen Withers. It could be even Tyjon Claude, the late transfer from Georgia Tech. Lubin, to me, I think he can bring like a physical presence and rebounding to this team. But I think he's only like 6'7", and when you already have a small backcourt, that's where I'm kind of interested to see how he fits in there, and just how he like plays. How can he function more as like a play finisher when you have guards who need the ball in their hands? Like at Vandy, some of his best games was like he would ISO defenders from the mid post, or he would attack slower footed bigs from the perimeter. Can't really shoot, but he's got a little bit of like, just big man ISO game to him. But I just don't think that's like the best offense for the team, is to, clear out for Van Allen Lubin. I think you'd rather like basically lay it out of the dunker spot or set screens and roll to the hoop.
And that's not to interrupt you, my bad, but
that
was like one thing for me, and this is why like I'm not as high on UNC this season, was like they were going after Cliff and Jonas Aidoo, and like you settled with Lubin, and like he's not even like the same size, not really the same position, and it's like, to me, and that's why I had to ask you about Jalen Washington's stat line, because it's like, were they trying to get like this superstar 5 because like Washington isn't ready for this leap and jump? Like that's just like it was running through my head. And when you strike out on both those guys and bring in an undersized forward from Vanderbilt, like to me, that's like caution, like a red flag.
I'm with you on that. I think that's like, because you see the flashes from Washington and they're super enticing, just because I can't remember the last time UNC's never had a guy his size make threes like that. I mean, Luke May was the closest UNC's had to a stretch 5, but he's probably like 6'8" on a good day. And Washington, I think, is closer to 6'10". But yeah, that did give me some pause just with projecting Jalen Washington for a big role, with how hard UNC went after Amorier and how hard they went after Aidoo, and they were recruiting Ugana and Yenzo up until like Lubin committed. Coleman Hawkins was another one, and even since then they were looking at a bunch of international bigs as well, like Julius Halafanoa, who ended up at Georgetown, who's a true 7-footer, and they had some conversations with, his name's Samet Yigitoglu, who's like a big Turkish dude at SMU. That kid's massive. He's like 7'2".
He's huge.
I would have loved him at Carolina. I was really bummed you didn't get him. I don't know exactly what fell through there, but yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Nick. It's the same. I didn't really think of it, but it's like, right. It's not. It doesn't seem, considering how hard they pursued some of these guys, that the plan was like, all right, Washington, like you're gonna be under Baycott, and then you're our guy.
Right.
And it's like not only that was delayed a year because Baycott stayed longer than like anyone thought was possible.
Yeah.
But it's like the fact that he's had those 2 years under has flashed, and they still attacked so hard trying to find that 5 makes it kind of like, how does Jalen Washington feel? Is he like what is that relationship like? Like, because he probably wants to play. Like,
Right.
he probably
I
didn't
mean-
want to be a backup 5 as a junior, considering
Yeah.
how he's recruited and considering he's been effective when he's been out there. So, like, I definitely think there's a dynamic there. There must have been a conversation that had to be had of like when he's like, hello, like if you bring in Cliff, like, are we going Twin Towers, or am I just gonna keep backing up forever? Like
Yeah,
he's still there. Like, I don't know if he thought of leaving, but I will say, in terms of an Alan Lubin, I like him, and I understand you settled, you use a backup plan, and essentially, but like started at Notre Dame, showed some nice flashes as a freshman, played way more minutes at Vanderbilt, scored 25 and 21 his last 2 games with double doubles, like at the end of the season. Really good offensive rebounder, and there could be some fun small ball 5 action with him, and could be a really good rebounding team. I feel like Carolina, and this is more of a Roy Williams thing, and I guess a Baycott thing, but always been good rebounding teams. I feel like when they were their best, and I don't know, like Brady Manick was fine, but like it's been a lot of that stretch 4 stuff. You mentioned it at the top, and like not saying Van Allen's is a stretch 4, but at least he can move. He took 43s last year. I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic. Obviously, front court and Elliot Cadeau's shot are like the questions with this team. So we'll see. But I hope Jalen Washington. I don't know. There has to be a dynamic there considering what happened this summer.
Right. I agree with you. I'm cheering for him. I mean, he did stick it out even with it seemed like, at least from the reports that were coming out, was like Washington was cool with him going after other bigs. Maybe I have no idea what those conversations were, but he certainly has a chance to prove himself now. And yeah, even with, I would say, like the optimistic end of, like, even though Carolina recruited over him, I was actually talking to one of my friends who's a Duke fan, who's a big Washington believer, who's like, well, Duke does this every year to future pros. Like they brought in Malik Brown, who played the 5 at Syracuse, even though they have Kamen Malawash waiting. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe we just don't always know what like coaches' motivations are. They're always trying to get better, even if they like the guys already on the team. So that's like the one bit of like optimism I'm having there, even though it seemed like UNC tried hard to recruit over Washington, but maybe there's still something there. Maybe he just needs opportunity.
Last one I've got for you is back to the freshmen. How good could they be? Like, could they be? Do you expect either them to be a one and done? I've seen Ian Jackson mocked pretty high, but Drake Powell, you seem to have more of an affinity for. And like I'm talking all ACC teams. Like, do you think they could be like the second best player? Either of them could be the second best player on this team after RJ.
I think there's a good chance one of them emerges as the second best player. Yeah. And it's funny. I think like I'm more of a Drake Powell guy just because he's like the local North Carolina kid who grew up down the street from Chapel Hill. And he's like a incredible defender who does all the, makes all the hustle plays that I think will endear him to fans rather quickly. But that being said, Ian Jackson is an absolute bucket, and he's got the personality as well. He's got the flair. Like he's just going to be a fun player to watch and cover. Just because he just seems like an absolute dog. Like if you're talking to him, it doesn't matter what position you want him to play. He's like, I'm cool playing next to a ball dominant guy like RJ. I'm cool with like if I get to be the one who's like handling and creating off the bounce and everything. He's just gonna. I think it'll be a little bit interesting to see how Hubert works out that fit alongside both Cadeau and RJ, because I think Jackson, I would say he's a good shooter, a little bit streaky, but it seems that he's more comfortable taking threes off the dribble than off the catch. And if he can refine himself to be a good spot up threat to play off of RJ, almost like Caleb Love at his best when he was at Carolina was when the ball was swinging around the perimeter off a reversal and Caleb catch the ball, make a read, either take the three or attack his defender off the bounce, like kind of in the flow of the offense. If Ian can thrive in that role. I see him averaging like 15 or 16 a game. Just because when he's out there, he's wired to score. Whereas Drake is probably going to be more so like a 7, 8, 9 point per game scorer, but he's going to give you some rebounding, and the defense is really what's going to keep him out there.
Appreciate the breakdown, Riley. It's gonna be a fun year, and at the end of the day, you know, you've got RJ Davis, so like they're always going to be in the mix. They're going to have the best player on the floor in most games, and we'll see the development of the young guys and of the less proven guys. Oh, hop in, Nick.
I had to say one thing before we leave this conversation because it's been on my head. I want to talk to someone who's a UNC fan. For the last few months, Jalen Withers' 3-point shot against Alabama has lived rent-free in my head for months. I don't understand why he shot that shot. He's an absolute wild card, and going into the season, less will be more with Mr. Withers, in my opinion. So
I agree completely.
He should have short rolled on the play. I don't know why he popped. He should have short rolled. It would have.
I don't know why he did either.
It lives rent free in my head. I like think about that play. I'm like, I relate to the USC on that one.
I don't know why he shot it either. I like the more Jalen Withers plays at the 5, I think the better for him. Again, I see him very much as like use him on the screen and roll, put him in the dunker spot, let him make cuts. Maybe he gets like one pick and pop 3 every couple of games.
I agree.
But not in crunch time until he shows he can make them consistently.
That was a huge one. I forget that. He was wide open. He's not a terrible shooter. I just feel like if he
just shot terribly last year.
You know, we don't need to dig too much into it. But Riley, thanks again for coming on, and hope you enjoy basketball season down in Chapel Hill.
Of course, fellas. Appreciate y'all having me on.